girl with a preppy vibe. Came to the spot with a friend of mine. She caught my eye. From the beginning, I was hooked. I can't tell a lie. Fresh, dressed, and fly. I respect her mind. Some dude trying to impress, but looking goofy at the same time. He bugging, she looking. I'm going for mine. Confidently, I approach with that eye-to-eye contact. She smiling while adjusting her hair, so I smile back. Pretty girl, what's your name? She said, is that true? Cause if it is, your name perfect for you. My name handsome. She said your name fits you too. See, we was clicking, and after that, time just flew. Then that time came to talk to her pops. He gave his blessing. And then that mind frame I had was honoring and protecting. I knew she was the one when we met. I found my future girl, and no other woman compares to my girl. Yeah, I knew it from the start.
Hey y'all, welcome to the check-in. I'm your girl, Sun Fashionista, and tonight we have a lot of great topics that we're going to cover. We're going to start off with BB. Where is he at? Is he harmed? Is he AI? Like, what's really going on? We're going to also get into some Operation Roaring Lion updates, some Operation Epic Fury updates. We're going to also get some insight regarding if President Trump's going to get any support from his allies regarding protecting the Strait of Hormuz, as well as hearing some military perspective, retired military perspective, that is. We're going to get into what DOGE investigations have uncovered, as well as what's going on with Cuba. So we have a lot to get into, and we're going to go ahead and get into this first video with Netanyahu. And he, I guess, wanted people to know that, he's alive and well, right? There's this big thing on the internet saying that he was AI in a video, that he had 6 fingers. So we'll get into that as well. But let's first see what he had to say in response to all of the chatter.
מה שאלת אותי?
ראש הממשלה אומרים ברשת שאתה בכלל מת?
אני מת על קפה, אתה יודע מה? אני מת על העם שלי. איך הם מתנהגים, פנטסטי. אתה רוצה לספור את מספר אצבעות?
אתה יכול להראות לנו?
פה. פה. ראית?
יפה מאוד.
לחיים.
ראש הממשלה מסר לאנשים שיוצאים ומתאווררים?
לצאת להתאוורר, אבל ליד מרחב מוגן. והעמידה שלכם היא מדהימה, נותנת כוח לי, לממשלה, לצה"ל, למוסד. אנחנו עושים דברים אני לא יכול לשתף ברגע זה, אבל עושים דברים מכים באיראן חזק מאוד, גם ביום הזה, גם בלבנון, ממשיכים. אתם אומרים לי להמשיך? אני אומר לכולכם, גם אתם תמשיכו. תמשיכו להישמע להוראות פיקוד העורף, כל הזמן, להישמע להוראות פיקוד העורף, וגם לראשי הערים, להיות תמיד ליד מרחב מוגן. ואנחנו נקל ככל שהדבר ניתן. ותודה לך על הקפה, הוא מצוין. אני לא יודע לגבי הקלוריות, זה נראה לי מסוכן מאוד. מה שאלת אותי?
ראש הממשלה אומרים ברשת שאתה בכלל מת?
אני מת על קפה, אתה יודע מה? אני מת על העם שלי. איך הם מתנהגים, פנטסטי. אתה רוצה לספור את מספר אצבעות?
אתה יכול להראות לנו?
פה. פה. ראית?
יפה מאוד.
לחיים.
ראש הממשלה מסר לאנשים שיוצאים ומתאווררים?
לצאת להתאוורר, אבל ליד מרחב מוגן. והעמידה שלכם היא מדהימה, נותנת כוח לי, לממשלה, לצה"ל, למוסד. אנחנו עושים דברים אני לא יכול לשתף ברגע זה, אבל עושים דברים מכים באיראן חזק מאוד, גם ביום הזה, גם בלבנון, ממשיכים. אתם אומרים לי להמשיך? אני אומר לכולכם, גם אתם תמשיכו. תמשיכו להישמע להוראות פיקוד העורף, כל הזמן, להישמע להוראות פיקוד העורף, וגם לראשי הערים, להיות תמיד ליד מרחב מוגן. ואנחנו נקל ככל שהדבר ניתן. ותודה לך על הקפה, הוא מצוין. אני לא יודע לגבי הקלוריות, זה נראה לי מסוכן מאוד.
Okay, y'all, so I thought that was kind of cute. Let's get into the background of it all.
Hello and welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned to CNN News 18. I'm Kritsween Valia. Let's talk about something that the internet has been obsessing over as far as the West Asia war is concerned. And you've probably come across some of these videos. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has appeared in a video showing 5 fingers to dismiss swirling rumors of his death after Iranian strikes. Now, there were a lot of rumors, conspiracy theories, as is being called by Israel. This is the latest video that's been put out by Benjamin Netanyahu. The footage comes as pro-Iran media, remember, claimed Netanyahu was either dead or gravely injured, possibly in coma. Iran's Revolutionary Guards, remember, have also issued a stark warning. They vowed to pursue and kill what they called child-killing criminal in reference to Benjamin Netanyahu. But the war between Israel and Iran has entered its third week, and now it's come down to exactly this. I do want to bring in Siddhant Mishra into the conversation. He's joining us in the studio here. Siddhant, what are we looking at? Now, we've translated a little bit of what we've seen here. It's hilarious how all of this has turned out to be. It all goes back to the Thursday press conference that was held by Israel's Prime Minister. And somehow, eagle-eyed media users, zoomed in on the 5 fingers. Some called it 6. Somebody called it 6 fingers of Benjamin Netanyahu, and that's how the conversation first began. But what's the clarification that we see here?
Well, Karoline, it's very funny. Amidst this Hormuz crisis, there's no flow of trade. U.S. forces are striking places in Iran. Iran doing counter strikes. I mean, so all this tension in the West Asia, perhaps for like more than 24 hours, social media was full with chatter. Where is Bibi Netanyahu? Is he alive? Is he dead? Where was he seen last time? There was so many chatter on my timeline only about Netanyahu's update. Some are saying that his press conference, it was not the real Netanyahu. It was AI-generated Netanyahu. Now, Israelis have this technology where they can generate their prime minister look-alike through the AI technology. And he had 6 fingers in that press conference. So those kinds of stories, funny stories were doing the rounds. Yeah.
Zooming into those visuals and literally counting whether it was 5 or 6, whether there's any truth to what these social media users have observed, whether or not are we going to hear something in the next few hours. It actually became as serious as that.
And there was a blanket silence from the Israeli side also. Sometimes I feel that this was some kind of the games which Israeli wanted to play. They were silent for like 24 hours. No response to these social media chatter, no clarification, no explanation, etc., etc. Now suddenly, Prime Minister Netanyahu comes up with this video of sipping coffee at a coffee shop in Israel. We don't know the exact location of this coffee shop, or whether it's in Tel Aviv or any other part of Israel. All we know is that he says that I'm alive, and he also says that you can count my fingers. And he said that I'm dead for coffee. So a very funny. Yeah.
They say they think I'm dead. And he said, I'm dead for coffee.
Yeah, I'm dead for coffee. So I feel that he was also enjoying these chatters, that Netanyahu is dead, his last location was leaked, and that how Iranians got to know about his location, and Iranian carried out strikes on those places, and he died, etc. I think Prime Minister Netanyahu was also kind of enjoying this media attention, this chatter around his death. And perhaps look at him right now. I mean, he's enjoying his coffee, sipping coffee at this cafe, very relaxed, very much in control of things. And look, he's speaking in Hebrew, so we can't be playing this video out for a video, the audio part. But he's telling the viewers, you can count my fingers. I am Netanyahu. There is no AI generated Netanyahu. I was the one who did the press conference the other day. So I'm alive, and I was dead for coffee. So very funny. As I said, that amidst all this tensions, trade, oil prices going up.
In 21st century, the internet story is as much a part of geopolitics, and we see geopolitics, a very active conflict, and internet all collide all at once. So it's very interesting how this has played out, and it's definitely caught the attention of one and all. Thank you so much, Siddhant, for joining us.
Okay, so several of you are saying that it's AI. So we got Craig Jackson in the chat. Welcome to the check-in. And he said to look at the video yourself and see the coffee is full even after the sip. You can see it's AI. Y'all, I must not be in the game. I'm out the loop with the AI then. I'm gonna have to go back, and my phone screen is very, very small, so I really can't see that well. But I'm gonna have to go back and look. We also have Siham Corey. Welcome to the check-in. Also saying that it's AI. And then we have Tanaj 1367. Welcome to the check-in. Saying when that creature leaves this earth, it's going to be one of the biggest celebrations this world has ever seen. Tanaj, what creature are we talking about? Help me out. Fill me in. We have let's see, we have Alton Bryce 1632 here. Welcome to the check-in, saying this Netanyahu video is also AI. Look at the coffee in the cup, never falls out the cup even though he's shaking it violently, and he puts his hand in his pocket and the jacket pocket closes all by itself. Okay, interesting. He has no coffee on his lips. Craig says that's a lot. Why are you gonna do again AI? Where is he? And then we have MBV production. Welcome to the check-in, saying Trump. Okay, y'all. I'm gonna have to go back and look at that again on a bigger screen so I can take into account all these things you guys are telling me, okay? Because I want to be in the loop with y'all. All right. So next up, we have a video where we have Iran demanding that the U.S. Israeli war comes to an end. So we are going to go ahead and go into that, and I'll stay tuned to you guys in the chat, okay?
As you're taking a live look there from Beirut, Lebanon, as we continue to follow the very latest developments, Iran demanding an end to U.S.-Israeli strikes before ceasefire talks. To talk more about all of these developments, I do want to bring on the Consul General of Israel to the Pacific Southwest, that is Israel Bahar, to our show. And we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Good morning.
As we continue to take a look at all of these developments, I do want to ask you this. When it comes to Operation Roaring Lion, what is Israel's definition of success?
I think, first of all, we need to set the historic record straight. I think that we're in historic times, and President Trump is doing what Chamberlain failed to do in 1938. So appeasement does not work with predators. So it didn't work, by the way, not with Hitler, of course, not with the Ayatollah. They don't believe in peace. So we're trying to set now in this operation, it's to take an immediate threat to the Israeli national security and to the free world, which is making sure Iran does not have a nuclear bomb nor ballistic missile to threat Europe, America, or Israel. That's our primary goals.
We do know that Israel is fighting Iran, but also Hezbollah. We've seen repeated attacks from Hezbollah as they, have missile strikes into Israel. Can you talk more about these conflicts, how these two are connected, and also the different strategies involved?
Well, Hezbollah, it's a terror organization that was formed by Iran in 1982, back then when we had the first Lebanon war. Hezbollah is a radical terrorist organization that operates under the guidance of Iran, direct guidance and authorities of Iran. So last year, Iran financed $1 billion this organization, plus its ammunition, so they can threat Israel. The Hezbollah decided to get into the fight and into the conflict to help Iran against Israel on the northern side of Israel. What they're trying to do is to neutralize the air power because they're sending rockets into Israeli communities in the northern side of Israel. They don't use ballistic missiles, but they use rockets because the border between Israel and Lebanon is just a few miles away. So Israeli civilians are under heavy bombardment by the Hezbollah. So we need physically to get into Lebanon with boots on the ground, not only air power, and pushing those terrorists away from our communities and our borders.
And we've seen Hezbollah targeting civilians in Israel. Israel does not target civilians, but we also see these terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah and also Hamas embed themselves within the civilian population. Can you describe the challenges that Israel is facing as they're working to just target those terrorist organizations, but who continue to use the civilian population to protect themselves?
Yes, it's correct. It's a good question, because what we are facing really, it's an organization that took over Lebanon. Essentially, they control all the southern side of Lebanon and all the villages. So every civilian installation, it's essentially, or almost all of them, essentially, they're terrorist outposts. So it caused a lot of effort on our side to try to prevent, to put Lebanese civilians in harm's way, and we're calling them to leave these places, go away up to the north side so they're not going to get hurt. So it makes it for us more complicated to fight this kind of a fight, but we made a notice early on to all the civilians, please leave this area. Unfortunately, I feel very sorry for the Lebanese people, for the civilians, because this terrorist organization ruined Lebanon. It took completely Lebanon, and they control most of the parts of Lebanon. So we are trying to push them away from other southern Lebanon, from other communities area in the northern side of Israel, push them from southern Lebanon up to the north. And also when you look at Beirut, they took a chunk of territory inside the Beirut, what we call the Dahia. This is a huge neighborhood, but essentially it's a small city inside Beirut, and then control it. And unfortunately, Lebanese civilians are suffering right now because of the Hezbollah organization. So that's their tactics. They don't care about civil life. They don't care about democracy for sure. And they don't care about Lebanon. They just use Lebanon as the launching pad. It's not about liberation or sovereignty of Lebanon. It's just another front for Iran to use against Israel.
And as we take a look at Iran, there has been a continual encouragement from President Trump to urge the people, the population of Iran to rise up and see a change in leadership. We have yet to see or even hear the voice of Iran's new supreme leader. It's unclear as to what his status is. When we take a look at who might be in charge in Iran making these military decisions, from the standpoint of Israel, what is the concern there?
Well, our concern is that the people will be too much afraid not to go to the street and move forward with the insurgency that they are, and the liberation process that they are running for the last 47 years. So we're doing the most that we can together with the American army to make the condition for the insurgents to feel secure, self-assured, and be successful in their effort to take over the regime. I don't know if it's going to be a peaceful transfer of power in Iran, yes or not, but we are doing the most that we can to help them. But in the end of the day, the Iranian people will need to come out to the streets and try to take their country back from those ayatollahs.
I also want to ask you this. As we have continued to see the conflict with Iran continue, there have been a recent rise in targeted attacks against the Jewish community in the United States, but also all around the world. Can you talk about the concern there and the steps being taken to protect the Jewish community?
Yeah, definitely. There is an increase in the last year in anti-Semitism here in America, and there is a global effort by Iran to carry out terrorist operation against Jewish installation around the globe. Unfortunately, last week we saw the attack of Beth Israel here in Michigan. Thank God the kids were not hurt, but definitely the Jewish community feels that it needs more protection, and that the American authorities are going to step up its efforts to dismantle and uproot and identify those terrorists here or sleeping cells here in America that are trying to target the Jewish communities. We're dealing with this threat of terrorism since the inception of Israel. Of course, Iran is going to try even more now to go after Jewish installations or Israelis that are traveling around the globe. We're doing the most that we can to prevent this regime and this terrorist organization and network to be successful. But here is the point. Iran is a state of terror. It's the #1 state that finances terror globally. And we see it in Europe, we see it around the globe, we see it against the Jewish installation. And Iran is a threat for sure for Israel, for Israelis, but it's a threat for the free world. They are trying to finance and carry out operations terror operation against Israel and most likely going to try also against American installation. You can see that they're trying to bomb embassies of America in Saudi Arabia and in other states in the region. Definitely, they're going to start to use terrorism as another mean in their war efforts against us.
Israel Bahar, Counsel General of Israel to the Pacific Southwest. As always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thank you very much.
So, y'all, what did you guys think about his statements? The gentleman that just got off here from Israel. He brought a lot of different perspectives about the different parts of the area with Iran and the people there. Quite interesting. And we talked about yesterday about, you know, them bombing the U.S. embassies in the surrounding area. So that's kind of interesting. I guess if you're going to be at war there, you should expect for the embassy for your country to be harmed, you know, in that area. So that makes sense in a way. So what are you guys saying here in the chat? We have Craig Jackson saying quite a bit. Thank you for the engagement. They take this serious and want to make what brings the end time war. Look who is pushing for the Antichrist. We have a Joel Ruggiero, welcome to the check-in, saying Iran is winning, Israel is burning, and Trump not getting help from Europe/NATO. We're going to talk about Trump and his call for help in a little bit, okay? We have 206 Tanisi. Welcome to the check-in, saying Fox News is fake. Just stop watching that. That's for the last force. Okay. And for those who are here, okay, for those who are here, welcome to the check-in. We have talked about BB and how they were saying that he was unalived and he did what some are saying is an AI video of him in a coffee shop. I got to go back and take a look at that, you know, to make sure that it is what it is. And now we just heard from Israel's about, you know, the Israeli-U.S. war, you know, coming to an end. So next up, we're going to talk about Zelenskyy and how he believes that Russia has provided capabilities to Iran. Let's get into it.
How worried are you that this war in Iran is going to divert attention and even resources from Ukraine? After all, a lot of American-made weapons were being bought by the Europeans and then given to you. Are you worried that these weapons will now all be diverted to the war in Iran?
Yeah, of course, we have big risks. I think so. And of course, I think that we can have deficit with air defense, especially Pak 3, Pak 2, for Patriot systems, for defending our sky. And, you know, after such difficult winter, such massive attacks using Iranian Shaheeds, by the way, 500 per day of Shaheeds, and dozens of ballistic missiles. And of course, for us, it's a very difficult, sensitive question. And of course, if the war will continue, of course, we will have deal with these challenges, and the challenges will only increase.
Do you get? Do you have intelligence or any information about this report that the Russians are providing Iran with intelligence, specifically providing Iran with intelligence on where American troops are, where American assets are, so that the Iranians can strike and kill Americans?
First of all, Russia gave drones already, these Shaheeds. They are using Iranian licenses, you know, that they built and produced a lot of drones. They gave them. I have 100% facts that that the Iranian regime used against American bases and against our Middle East, and Middle East neighbors of Iran. They used these drones. We saw intelligence shared with us some details, and it was Russian details in these Iranian drones. That's the first. And the second point is my intelligence told me next that they think that they share information intelligence with Iranian regime. They helped them. And also, my intelligence told me that they said if Europe and the United States can help Ukraine with intelligence in this war, it means that Russia can help Iranian regime.
So just to pause for a second there, when we looked at the video yesterday of the prime minister from Iran, he did say that, okay, yeah, we have an alliance with, Russia and China. And yes, we strategize, we do war planning, things of that nature. So I don't know why he's saying his intelligence, because the prime minister went on television and said that they have a rapport, an alliance with Russia and China, and they are working together on various things. He would not just come out and say if he's getting any type of like drones or anything from Russia, but he did indicate that yes, we are friendly, if that makes sense. Let's keep it going.
Their point of view on this. So it's a fact, and you see that it's not a big secret.
Now, you have been able to do something extraordinary. You've been asking for weapons from the West, but now you are providing weapons to the Gulf states and perhaps even to America, because Ukraine is very advanced in drone and anti-drone warfare. Will you be able to afford to continue to provide these kind of weapons to Saudi Arabia and the UAE and the US?
So we've got messages from the United States. Also, I spoke with Emirates and Saudi, and we spoke also with Qatar and Jordan. And we understand what does it mean at the very beginning of the war when you are under big, massive attacks. We remember this. And I said that we, with Americans, we are partners. We are ready to help Americans, and we are ready to help also Middle East allies. So we are ready to help to save the lives of civilians. And I moved 3 big group of experts, military experts from our army, and they will help.
Do you worry, though, that you still have not been able to persuade President Trump, it seems to me, because he tweeted out saying, if America does not have enough weapons, it's because Joe Biden gave them all to Zelenskyy. And he compared you to P.T. Barnum. It does seem that President Trump still has some anger or resentment toward Ukraine and even toward you personally.
I don't know, Farid. Be honest, I'm looking just to the facts. So what Middle East countries and American bases, what they need now, just to be in more strong security. So they need interceptors. It's drone interceptors. It's new technologies. It's our technologies. So President Biden, we are thankful to America and bipartisan support and to President Trump, but we never got drones interceptors from the United States. So we never asked, it's just new technologies. But we've got Patriot missiles, and we are thankful to America that we could get some missiles. But also at the same moment, I want to underline that Middle East partners had more missiles for Patriot than we've got from the United States and Europeans during all the war. They used more missiles. They used more than 800 Patriot missiles during first attack, during first 24, 36 hours. So more than we had during all the months. But when we speak how to close the sky, we gave what we had. And what our American friends, they don't have, or European friends, they don't have, such a big system of these experts. They have more other things, very strong things, but not this. And Middle East countries asked us exactly about this.
Let me ask you about the situation in between Russia and Ukraine, because the reports that I'm hearing from the ground are that Ukraine is now gaining territory for the first time in 2 years in the area around Zaporizhia. Can you tell us a little bit about this? And if so, What has changed that has allowed Ukraine to now start taking back some territory from Russia?
Russia prepared new big offensive operation, and they wanted to begin it at the end of last year and to continue it spring this year. And they prepared this operation. It was our counteroffensive steps, parallel steps. And so we wanted to do it, not to give possibility to Russia to attack us massively on the battlefield. So we began the operation at the end of the year, and we got back control on 434 kilometers. And it was a successful story, not only about the land, because you know that this is not about the land, it's more about people, and it's more about how to destroy the big offensive operation of Russia. So, and these steps been very successful, and it's all about not only about our steps on the battlefield, it's also about our drone tactics, about our projects of drone operations. So Russia began to lose 35,000 people per month because of drones, because of FPVs and other drones which we use on the battlefields. It's not deep strikes. It's all about our forces, our army. So we prepared for the offensive operations, destroyed the operation, and destroyed so many Russian soldiers.
You mentioned recently that the Russians seem to have backed off from peace talks. The Americans suggested holding them in America. The Russians are saying they want them in Europe. Do you think this is a signal that the Russians now think maybe with the price of oil going up, maybe with America distracted in Iran, they don't need to even try to pretend that they're engaging in peace talks?
First of all, they never wanted. You know, it's my opinion. I'm sharing just my opinion. I know that my colleagues from the United States, and sometimes they have different view, but we are partners. I mean, we share very openly what we think about it. So Putin never wanted to stop the war. They've been afraid of steps of President Trump and pressure from America. That's why he played this game that he wants negotiation. And I'm still sure that America has to make big pressure on Putin. Otherwise, he will not negotiate. He wants only ultimatums from us that we have to withdraw from our territory, but he will not end with this. No, it's not enough for him. Of course, this situation in Iran gives him more money, and the process of taking off the sanctions, this new sanctions policy, also helpful for him personally. And that's why, of course, it gives more assurance to Putin that he can continue the war. And we will see. Now we are asking our partners from the United States that we have to fix the date of trilateral meeting. We always supported this format, supported President Trump and his team. Now the American side postponed because of Iran, postponed the meeting. But if we really want to stop the war, we need to meet. We need to meet on technical groups. We need to meet on the level of leaders. We need more pressure on Russia. If we will not do these steps, yes, we will not be closer to the peace.
Interesting. Okay, so why is Zelenskyy having a opinion on this? Do you guys know? Is he just wanting to be a part of the conversation since because I guess he can be? Yeah, I don't know, y'all. We have John here, John R5L9Y. Welcome to the check-in. You're saying Zelenskyy is a true leader, unlike the orange bozo who has disgraced America. So, John, can you tell me why is he giving perspective on this? Help me out with that. We have user EX2BO6UB4G. Welcome to the check-in. Saying Russia has strong business relations with Iran. Iran buys oil and arms from them. And then we have him also saying Russia and Iran are the equivalent of the United States and Israel. Okay, I got you. Let's see. We have Muhammad IJAZ5696. Welcome to the check-in, saying he is good at dancing. And then we have Craig Jackson saying, have a good evening and peace. Don't let the media let you bad moods. Ciao. So I did a couple of polls, right? And so one was, do you think that Russia is providing ammunition support to Iran? So 60% of you guys said, heck yeah. 21% said time will tell. And then 19% said no. So thank you all for participating in that. I did another poll earlier. Let me get those results. It should still be here. Do you think Netanyahu, boy, that's an interesting name. Do you think he's alive and well? 40% said yes, 40% said no, and then 20% said it's AI. So quite a few said it was AI in the chat. So we have that, okay? So next up, we are going to take a look at what happened at the Dubai airport. To my understanding, there have been like 3 drone attacks either on or near the airport since it's all started. So we're gonna go ahead and get into that because you know what? Dubai is one of the busiest airports in the world. And they were like, oh, we're just gonna we're gonna just delay our schedule a little bit. Let me tell you, if I was trying to fly in or out of Dubai, I'd be terrified. When you got drones, just coming at you and you want to get in a plane, let me just sit right here on this couch where I'm at, okay? Let's get into it.
Well, we have some breaking news that is coming in from Dubai. A drone attack has sparked a fire near Dubai's international airport. Authorities say that the drone hit a fuel tank. The Dubai media office say that the authorities are responding to a fire resulting from a drone-related incident in the vicinity of Dubai International Airport. It added that all necessary measures are being taken to ensure everyone's safety. Earlier, a rocket attack on Baghdad International Airport wounded 5 people on Sunday. The evening attack was followed by a fresh rocket and drone barrage targeting the airport around midnight. Baghdad's airport, including a sprawling military complex that is divided into several bases belonging to the Iraqi army and security services, as well as a US diplomatic and logistics facility. We are still waiting for word on whether these 2 incidents are connected or part of a wider regional escalation. Dubai International is one of the world's busiest transit hubs, and any disruption there has massive global implications for travel and commerce. We are currently monitoring, flight tracking data to see if any diversions are in place, while the Dubai media office is stressing that the situation is being managed. And they say they have added that all necessary measures are being taken to ensure everyone's safety.
So what you guys think? What you guys think about that? With them shooting those drones at the Dubai airport, would you all be flying in to Dubai with all this going on? I'm gonna put a poll for y'all. Considering the drones, hold on, y'all. Considering the drone attacks, would you fly into Dubai at this time? Let's see. All right, I'm going to put that in here right now. Would you fly into Dubai with all this going on with the drones and whatnot? That is just insanity. I just would not be doing it, okay? So moving on. So as you guys know, Trump is asking for support in protecting and policing the Strait of Hormuz. So he was on the Air Force One, I believe, taking questions, and he put it out there. And what's interesting is that he's not asking them on a personal basis, like, hey, go into each country. He's putting out these statements and interviews and things like that. Okay, so let's go ahead on and check that out real fast.
These countries come in and protect their own territory because it is their territory. It's a place from which they get their energy, and they should come and they should help us protect it. We are talking to other countries about working with us on the policing of the strait, and I think we're getting good response. If we do, that's great, and if we don't, that's right too. Remember, like as an example, in many cases, the NATO countries, we're always there for NATO. We're helping them with Ukraine. And it's got a notion that between us doesn't affect us, but we've helped them. It'd be interesting to see what country wouldn't help us with a very small endeavor, which is just keeping the strait open. And by comparison, it's small because Iran has very little firepower left. And again, remember, there's about seven. Just remember that it's something that we don't need, and these countries don't need. And yet for years, it's like, for years we've been maintaining it, doing a great job. And now that now that they've been diminished in terms of military, their military has been greatly diminished. I think it's a good thing for other countries to come in. Now, it would have been nice, as I said to the Prime Minister of the UK, who sort of was reluctant to put his 2 aircraft carriers into harm's way. That would be 2 weeks ago. And as soon as we demolished, essentially, pretty much demolished them, I don't know yet, but pretty much we're in great shape. That way everybody knows. He said, we'd like to send our aircraft carriers. I said, I don't want them after we win the war. I want them before we start. So whether it's whether we get support or not, but I can say this, and I said it to them, we will remember.
Okay, so you heard what he had to say, right? He said that we will remember. So he was really talking to I want to say the UK Prime Minister, because I guess he asked for the UK to provide some support at the beginning of all this, and they declined. So I do have a response from the UK Prime Minister who's going to show up a little bit later in our stream here, okay? So I have several responses from different leaders across Europe, okay? How they decided to answer the call to Trump when it comes to getting support for this Operation Epic Fury, if you will. Now, one thing he mentioned, and I understand where he's coming from. He's saying, well, we help all these people and now we need help. But I think the thing is that, if you're going to go into this type of situation, right, I would think that you would give somebody a heads up. You would, beforehand get an idea for their appetite for participation, that type of thing, right? So I don't think that was done. As a matter of fact, like I told you all, I went to bed on a Friday night and I woke up and we were pretty much at war. It was just like that, okay? So now he's asking for support. And I guess maybe the UK or some country was going to provide something after the fact. As he made the comment saying, "Well, I needed it beforehand, not after we've won." And I'm not sure how you define winning in this scenario, but I guess we will see one day, correct? But yes, y'all, that was his call and request for support from the NATO partners. Okay. Now, if you are here, please consider liking this live stream to push me in the algorithm, as well as support the channel by subscribing. Thank you for being here. I'm going to get into a couple of questions or comments from the chat, and then we're going to go to our next topic real fast, okay? So we have Illy Not Given 9236 in the house. Welcome. Saying, but why? Pete says no quarter or mercy for our enemies in Iran. Then I think that in the effort of defeating monster, we are becoming them. Okay. We have Valerie Becheretto 640. Welcome. She says bonjour. We have Lou here saying hello. We have Mark Travis. Welcome to the check-in, saying hello. And the United Nations can be weak. We have Thomas Scully here. Welcome. Saying Putin blackmailing child molester. And we got Trump here. Okay. Then we have Telecom to Cloud. Welcome to the check-in. Saying trust in Snake, never trust in America and Israel. Okay. And then we have Annette B7363. Welcome to the check-in. Saying, didn't the Lambus NATO at the start of and threaten to remove us? I'm not sure. But for all those who are here, welcome to the check-in. Okay, so next up, we're going to hear what Miss Karoline Leavitt had to say. She answered a few questions on the topic today. Let's go ahead and get into that.
Yes. So the president looks forward to meeting with President Xi in China. This is a trip I know he's long been looking forward to, and I know President Xi has been looking forward to welcoming President Trump. As for the dates, as you heard from the president last night, there's a possibility the trip could be delayed. We'll keep you posted on that, but these are leader-to-leader conversations that are happening, so as soon as we have an update, we'll provide the new dates.
Caroline, President Trump says that other countries should now step up to safeguard ships in the Straits of Hormuz. Why should other countries that weren't consulted about this war, that aren't involved in this war, now put their troops in harm's way in the Strait of Hormuz?
Because these other countries are benefiting greatly from the United States military taking out the threat of Iran. The rogue Iranian regime has long not just posed a threat to the United States of America, but of course to our Gulf and Arab partners in the region. As you see, I believe Iran has struck more than 300 civilian targets in the Gulf region. If you think about Europe, their ballistic missile capability that the United States military is currently wiping out was a direct and imminent threat to our European allies as well as our bases in the region, which is why President Trump took this action in the first place. So these countries are absolutely benefiting from ensuring that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. This is something not just the United States, but the entire Western world has agreed with for many, many years. So I think the president is absolutely right to call on these countries to do more, to help the United States to reopen the Strait of Hormuz so that we can stop this terrorist regime from restricting the free flow of energy. And the fact that they are doing so just underscores why President Trump needed to take this action in the first place.
The president just told the UK a few days ago that he doesn't need their ships, and now he says he does?
The president spoke on that last night. He said that he wished the UK had stepped up sooner and quicker, but he continues to speak with our allies in Europe and is calling on them to do more, just as he did when he called on them to step up with respect to their defense spending in NATO. He's calling them to do more here, and I think you'll see that come to fruition.
Okay, so she's addressing some of the questions that we've had in the comments here, as in why are we expecting these other countries to support when they weren't considered, in the pre-planning stages. So there you have that, right? And so Caroline did her thing, answered the question, and she's saying that they benefit from this and they need to also support because they also receive their oil and whatnot from this Strait of Hormuz. Okay, now what I'm going to show you guys next is we have some prime ministers that got together and gave their opinion as to Trump's request when it comes to the providing of support. So tell me what you think their answer is going to end up being.
Dear Mark, it's great to have you among us, the Nordic leaders. And I have to say to you that you have a lot of supporters in our countries. The speech you gave in Davos, I have never experienced anything like this. I mean, people in Denmark, and I guess the same goes for the rest of the Nordic countries, have been talking about, they have been reading your speech. And I don't think I have ever heard so many reflections on a speech from a colleague as I have heard about your speech in Davos. And it is because you show leadership. You are talking about how democracies can work together and that we have to connect even closer in this world where the old world order is gone and it will probably not come back. So we have to build something new. And it has to be a world order that is built on the values that we represent, the leaders standing in front of you today. I am very grateful, I have to say this, for all the help we have received in the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland and Denmark. We have had a totally unacceptable pressure from US and the US president. It has been very difficult for the people in Greenland to experience this. And one of the reasons why we have been able to stand firmly on very common values, that you have to respect sovereign states, that you have to respect a people's right for self-determination, is because of our good friends in the Nordic countries, in Europe, but also with partners outside, especially you, Mark. So we are deepening our cooperation in the Arctic region. It is important. We are deepening our cooperation also militarily in our own region, not only the Arctic, but also more locally in the northern part of Europe. It's going I think, in the right direction. But with everything going on now, with the war going on in Ukraine, US unfortunately lifting up sanctions on Russia, a war in Middle East, countries like ours have to stand together. We have to stick together and we have to work together, and that is what we have committed ourselves to do.
My question is on the war situation in Iran and the Middle East. I ask, it's in principle to all of you prime ministers. Have you discussed or reached a Nordic-Canadian alignment regarding how to end this war? And what are your respective countries' analysis and contributions to such a solution? Or whose war is this really?
Well, I think we are not part of this war. We did not initiate it, but we are all affected by it. So I think there's a clear call here that international law must be respected, and it should be the responsibility of the concerned parties to find ways of ending the hostilities that now have great impact around the world. We are concerned to see that there is still an escalation. There are still worries about how the world economy will be affected by the energy situation around the Gulf. For our part, we will use any channel we have, any opportunity we have to urge the parties to find a way that will not escalate this war. I think that's what we can say. It is not our war. It seems to us that the plan for how it will develop is pretty unclear. And that's the danger with initiating wars, that they rarely follow a script.
Yes, and I have a question for Prime Minister Mark Carney, but also for the four Nordic leaders of Denmark's neighbors. Here you are side by side talking about the importance of unity. If a country within the NATO alliance tries to take over Greenland, would Canada then be ready to contribute with military forces and actually put up military resistance to protect Greenland?
Well, the first thing I'd say, thank you for the question. We stand foursquare behind the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity. It is for the people of Greenland and Denmark to decide their futures. And first point, being absolutely clear about that, being clear that we will back that with measures as necessary as a partner, and being I think the fact that we and others have been clear, I don't want to put it on Canada, but European Union and others have been clear about these fundamental principles and the principle of solidarity has helped to create the space, which always should have been there, to be clear, to develop a better security umbrella in the Arctic, but also including Greenland. So we're clear on where we stand, and we will continue to stand with Denmark and Greenland.
If I were to respond on behalf of Norway, we are part of an alliance based on collective security. And what we have done over the last year, the Arctic 7, is to develop the script on how NATO will look after security in all of Arctic. We have our more geographic close parts of the Arctic, where NATO has been present, has had the strategy and regional plans for a couple of decades. And now we are broadening that. So I would approach that question by saying, that NATO allies stand together, and we have developed plans to deliver on that.
And I think it's fair to say that we quite recently fully and firmly proved that we stand behind Denmark.
Yes, we stand fully behind Denmark, and we will. And I'm proud how united we were a few months ago, and we need to continue. But what is important now is strengthen Arctic security together. And from my perspective, Arctic security is one of our biggest concerns. Arctic starts from our eastern border and continue to the Greenland and Canada. That's why we need to work together and strengthen Arctic security.
I'll finish with this fact, which is historically, when Canada has made defense procurement, 70 cents on the dollar, more than 70 cents on the dollar, has gone to the United States. Not just to American companies, but gone to the United States. That's not an effective way to build our industry or to protect our people. And so what we've been doing, we will still do a lot of procurement with the United States, to be absolutely clear, but in all cases looking to procure much more in partnership, and it's a much broader range of countries with whom we can partner. Last point, particularly given the maritime and Arctic nature of the security needs we have, plus the virtual, the Nordic countries are natural partners for Canada, the short answer.
If I may just, I have 100% respect for that process that Canada is now undertaking when it comes to submarines. That's a big undertaking.
Okay, so what you guys think about that? So the Nordic countries, they're sticking together when it comes to what they have going on. And I can't say I blame them for that. And the answer is no, they're not they're not getting involved in this. Okay. So in the poll here, okay, it's gonna come up here. Okay, in the poll, you guys said 69% says that they think that the Nordic prime ministers will answer the call and support Trump. 69% said no, 17% said yes, and 14% said, "Are you serious?" Exactly. We have Purple Penguin saying Iran is letting Chinese ships pass through. Yes, they are. And there are some ships that are pretending to be Chinese ships just to go ahead and get through as well, is what I heard. We have Masoon, welcome to the check-in, saying, have you seen Canada's Navy? USA protects Canada. You Canadians forget how close you are to Russia. Okay. Then we got No Waves, Yehuda, welcome to the check-in, saying, yes, China's ships can pass through and Russia can sell oil again. This war profits our two biggest rivals. Only America desperately needs it open. Okay. So next up, y'all, we're going to hear from the UK Prime Minister. He is the one that Trump was talking about when we needed those 2 ships or whatever, and you wanting to provide support after the fact. He was talking about this gentleman. So we're going to see what he has to say as how he's going to stand on business with his decision. Let's get into it.
My answer is clear. Whatever the challenges that lie ahead, this government will always support working people. That is my first instinct, my first priority, to help you with the cost of living throughout this crisis. And I want to make one final point, because moments like this also tell you about leadership. Whether to commit British troops to military action is the most serious responsibility for any Prime Minister.
Right.
I have been attacked by some for my decision not to join the offensive against Iran. But at every stage, I've stood by my principles, principles which I held just as strongly when it came to debate about the Iraq War in 2003. Principles which I believe are shared by the British people, that our decision should be based on a calm, level-headed assessment of the British national interest. And that if we are to send our servicemen and women into harm's way, the very least they deserve is to know that they do so on a legal basis and with a proper, thought-through plan. Now, there are others who would have made a different decision 2 weeks ago. They would have rushed the UK headlong into this war without the full picture of what they're sending our forces into and without a plan to get us out. That is not leading, it's following. My leadership is about standing firm for the British interest, no matter the pressure. And I believe time will show that we have the right approach, right on the economy and the cost of living, right on defence and energy, and right on this war, in the best interests of... Thank you.
Okay, so he said what he said, didn't he? I mean, he's standing on business. He's saying that he needs to make a calculated, deliberate decision that, you know, if he would have just went into this thing, he would have been more of a follower, not a leader. And then he's thinking about the lives that are going to be impacted by the decision that he makes. So I think that he made some sound points here. What you guys think? Now I know we got Eli not giving in the chat saying, I really like the cadence of his speech. It's slow, deliberate, and serious. Yes, he made sure we understood him. Okay. We got No Waves Yehuda saying facts 100. Miss Annette B 7363 said no rambling. Yeah, he came there with a deliberate message. I agree. Because he's seen he's seen what Trump has said about him. So he wanted to be very clear with his words and get his point across, which I think he did. Now there's some other people from his country that wanted to give their opinion on everything going on with Trump and his request for support and with what the prime minister had to say out of UK. So let's go ahead and see what they wanted to contribute.
There speaking in London, the main thrust, if you like, of what he said there, particularly at the end there, about him being attacked by some for not joining the offensive, but that he stood by his principles and any decision to join or send British military forces would be on a calm assessment and it must be a legal basis through a proper thought-out plan. Well, let's analyse it then. Angela Diffley, our international affairs editor, is with me. Angela, very much, particularly at the end of that, Keir Starmer really defending his record over the last few weeks, because he's been attacked from many sides for not getting more involved, hasn't he?
Absolutely. You know, we must remind our listeners and viewers, he is the head of a Labour government. He has been attacked from all sides, as you say. He flip-flopped a bit at the beginning of this war. You know, Trump asked to use British bases in the Indian Ocean, and Starmer said no. He was roundly criticised for that on the right of the British parliamentary spectrum. Then he changed a little and said, OK, you can use our base in the Indian Ocean for defensive purposes, and it has been used since then. Then afterwards, Trump said, look, don't offer your help now. This war is won. We don't need you. Well, look how things have changed. Now, Donald Trump asking openly for help on the Strait of Hormuz, so that asking several countries to come in and help the US open the Strait of Hormuz. No easy job that. You know, Keir Starmer is in a very difficult position. His Labour voters would be appalled at the idea of Britain being on the same side as Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. A lot of his Labour voters have been very, very agitated already by the war in Gaza. It would be extremely difficult for him to commit to that. Also, he is, above all, and he's often criticised for being too much of a lawyer, not enough of a politician. He is a lawyer. He always looks at the legal basis. And as he said very clearly there at the end, it's not clear what this war is about. I'm not committing our soldiers to it until there is a clear objective and a clear goal, and I'm convinced that it is legal, and therefore he stands by his decision. And it looks very much as if he is not going to heed Donald Trump's call to help out by trying to help reopen the Straits of Hormuz. One of his ministers said this morning, let's be very clear, this is not a NATO war, because, of course, Donald Trump has been saying, you know, this will be very bad news for NATO if NATO members don't help us out. NATO, the Minister for Work and Pensions, was reminding people, was set up so that if one nation is attacked, a NATO nation, then all of the others can be called upon to help. But it was not, he said, set up for a situation where one NATO member might choose to go to war, and then that the others might be obligated to help. So this is very bad news for NATO. I don't know how Mark Rutte is going to spin all of this. It's very difficult. Britain coming out very firmly saying that within the EU, with EU members, that it is part of a collective. They're looking at ways to help out, but no yes to Donald Trump.
It was interesting, wasn't it, though? He did say that the Strait of Hormuz has to be reopened. He talked about working with allies to put together a collective plan. It sounds very much like there's no military involvement in that plan. It'd be interesting to see what they might be considering, I suppose.
Well, nobody seems to have any good solutions to this. Even the idea of the military one is very difficult to pull off. He talked about doing that with EU allies. It's very unclear what is meant by that at all. A collective that might find other ways of getting around the problem of the Straits of Hormuz. It might be that Iran makes very clear that those who it considers friendly nations can go through the Strait of Hormuz, and those that it considers unfriendly nations cannot go through the Strait of Hormuz. Where is the European Union? Where is Britain going to be on all of that? This thing is getting messier and messier. Astonishing, again, that it seems Washington didn't think all of this through beforehand, because with all the gigantic military firepower that Washington has, that Israel has, a few divers, a few speedboats can put mines on the bottom of very, very hefty ships and cause havoc.
And finally, Angela, I mean, most of what he said there was very much for an international audience, but also there was that very domestic audience that he was obviously trying to talk to, came up with that phrase about helping working people a lot. And although a lot of the measures that he announced apply only to the UK, they're the kind of measures, aren't they, that countries right around the world are going to be looking at to try and support and help people in their own individual countries.
Yeah, some of them are quite long term. Again, talking about we must invest more and more in green energy. We must not allow ourselves to be dependent on oil coming from certain parts of the world. We must not be over-reliant on particular suppliers, even if we take oil. A lot of long-term measures and some specific measures to help the UK population who, again, there's been a lot of criticism on the right in Britain, people saying that since COVID, people expect protection from everything and that it is not the government's job to borrow money or to in order to help people every time something like this happens. But Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister. He is facing, again, a lot of complaint about the mounting energy prices. He is already a very beleaguered Prime Minister, attacked both on the left and the right in Britain. And although he had a very, very huge majority when he was elected just not even 2 years ago, each of those seats in many cases was won on a very thin margin. And so many of his politicians, his parliamentarians, worry that they will lose their seats because Labour people and is having difficulty delivering.
That was kind of interesting, right? So I guess you guys picked up on how they're saying that the strategy was to kind of get these folks to, break away from the United States. So as you guys can guess, as of right now, the UK is not planning to support, nor the Nordic countries. And then now we're going to see what the folks over in Italy have to say. So let's get into that.
The threats are becoming increasingly frightening, and unilateral interventions conducted outside the scope of international law are multiplying. We must also place the American and Israeli intervention against the Iranian regime in this context. An intervention in which I must say right away, to avoid any misunderstanding, Italy is not taking part and does not intend to take part. It has emerged as a key factor. We must work on the diplomatic front to verify whether and when there might be opportunities for a return to diplomacy. An objective that, however, is certainly impossible as long as Iran continues with its unjustified attacks on the Gulf countries and other countries in the region. But we also intend to make our voices heard so that while the military actions of the United States and Israel connaissent Iran's military capacity, our appearance, our surveillance, armaments militaires, the safety of civilians, etc. For this reason, on behalf of the government, I strongly condemn the massacre of the girls at the school in Minab in southern Iran. Express my solidarity with the families of the very young victims and call for a rapid investigation into who is responsible for this tragedy. We have already discussed in Parliament the provision of air defense assets to the Gulf countries, a move undertaken by other major European nations as well. And this is not only because they are friendly nations and strategic partners of Italy, but also because there are tens of thousands of Italian citizens in that area that we must protect. Not to mention that there are around 8,000 Italian soldiers in the Gulf. We have, moreover, as you are aware, deployed one of our naval vessels to Cyprus in support of a European ally whose territory has been the subject of Iranian attacks. This is a necessary act of European solidarity, but also of prevention. I would also like to clarify the matter of military bases once more here. It seems to me that all European partners are complying with the provisions of their agreements on this matter. The much talked about Spanish government also said through its spokesperson that there is a bilateral agreement between Spain and the United States, and outside of that agreement, there will be no use of Spanish bases. The upshot of this is that the agreement is not under consideration, and likewise, all activities included in the agreement are not under consideration. This is what Italy is also doing, and frankly, it is surprising that this choice is being condemned at home and praised in Spain by the exact same people. One is an opposing opinion on the other proposals. Towards under risk, especially in such an unstable international context. With the outbreak of the crisis in the Middle East, the issue of energy prices has clearly become even more relevant, and this is why, at a European level, we are also asking, while waiting for this necessary revision announced for the second half of this year, to urgently suspend the application of the ETS to the production of electricity from thermal sources, i.e. from thermal electric power. This is a measure that is needed immediately, and at least
Okay, y'all. So we have Italy here. They're saying they're not supporting. And so now we have someone from Qatar giving his perspective. So let's see what he has to say. And once I get done with that, I will get to the comments here. So for those of you who are new here, we are currently looking at the different countries, seeing if they're going to support Trump with his request for protecting the Strait of Hormuz.
We urge the international community to use all its capacity to make sure that these attacks on our sovereignty here in Qatar and in the region stop immediately. And we rebuke any justification that the Iranians are offering for this attack. This is an attack on our sovereignty, an attack on our people, an attack on our economy, an attack on our infrastructure and vital infrastructure. And therefore, this is not to be accepted and will be dealt with accordingly. Regarding the appointment of a new supreme leader in Iran, right now we are busy in defending our country from Iranian missiles, and we are not at the time of political niceties. And therefore, the concern right now is how to protect ourselves, our people, from the attacks that keep incoming to our country and have not stopped since the first day of this war.
And President Trump, secondly, said yesterday that
I will confirm again that from our part here in Qatar, we have always believed that any conflict would only end on a negotiation table. And however difficult the situation right now is, the end of this conflict will be on a negotiation table. And therefore, the quicker we get to that negotiation table, end the escalation, stop the attacks on our countries and our peoples, the better it is for the people of the region and international peace and security and international economy. The strategic partnership, not only with the US, but all of our defense partners in the world, is not up for question. We have taken the decision to strategically ally ourselves in this way as part of a wider regional security framework. Obviously, the current conditions and the conditions of the past two years have or are leading us to strengthen our situation when it comes to international partnerships, when it comes to defense and security, but that has no bearing on the strategic positioning with the United States when it comes to security here in the region.
Would receive free passage through the Strait of Hormuz. How does Qatar?
No one in the world, including the Iranian foreign minister, has any say on Qatari sovereignty and who we choose to host in our country and what kind of diplomatic relationships we are going to have.
I heard that.
ضمن التصعيد في المنطقة كيف تقيم قطر مستوى التنسيق الدبلوماسي مع الشركاء؟
بالنسبة لمضيق هرمز نحن نؤكد موقفنا بأنه التعرض لخطوط الملاحة بهذا الشكل في أي صراع كان في أي جغرافيا كانت هو غير مقبول ولا يمكن القبول به. هذا المضيق وغيره من الممرات المائية لا يمر عبرها فقط شحنات النفط والغاز، تمر عبرها الأغذية والأدوية وكل ما يحتاجه الإنسان للحياة في هذه الدول. بفضل الله ومنته قطر لديها خطوط إمداد مختلفة، ولكن إغلاق المضيق بهذا الشكل أو التعرض لسلامة الإبحار في المضيق يمثل خطورة عالية جدا علينا جميعا، ونحن ندعم الجهود خاصة الدبلوماسية التي تهدف إلى تجنيب المضيق وتجنيب الخليج العربي تبعات هذا التصعيد.
Okay, so he said what he had to say. He said that basically they need to get to the negotiation table and stop all this war and stop damaging, their his homeland, okay? So what do we have here in the comments? We have Eli not giving, saying who specifically made the US government their enemy in an effort to thwart them. So we have New Waves Yehuda saying they are fighting Iran because they have American bases. That Sweet Chili is saying, UAE, you can't say nothing because you agree to let Americans and others use your land. What do you expect? We got we have Rob Davidson saying to Eli not giving, no Americans were ever held hostage at any Olympics games. Israeli athletes were held hostage in the 1972 summer games. I didn't know that. No Wave says, exactly how you gonna let an enemy shoot out your house? They complain when your house is also hit. That's an interesting analogy. Mark Rose says, one man, baby, has caused all this rubbish, and the fallout of this will go on for years, and now he's upset because we won't follow his lead. Okay, Mark Rose. So guess what? I have remarks from him regarding people supporting or not. So let's go ahead and see what he had to say on that. One second, y'all.
Yes, please. CNN. Hey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not CNN, I'm Daily Wire, but thank you
Go
for
ahead.
the question. Numerous countries have told me they are on their way. Can you give us a hint what they are, what that entails, how soon they might be there?
You mean who are the countries?
Yes, sir.
I'd rather not say yet, but we'll be announcing Marco Rubio and the various people that are doing that will be announcing. And I have to tell you, we have some that are really enthusiastic. They're coming already. They've already started to get there. It takes a little while to get there. It's like, in some cases, you have to travel an ocean. So it doesn't go that fast, but it'll go fast. And we have some that are fairly local that are doing it. But we'll give you a list. Some are very enthusiastic and some are less than enthusiastic. And I assume some will not do it. I think we have one or two that will not do it that we've been protecting for about 40 years at, tens of billions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. So I'll be reporting that to you in the House and the Senate. And I'll say, why are we protecting countries that don't protect us? And I've always felt that was a weakness of NATO. We were going to protect them. But I always said, when in need, they won't protect us. Now, this isn't need. Need would be one of the big boys. But I will say that we built the greatest military in the world, and we protect people. And if we need their mine boats, or if we need anything, any piece of apparatus that they may have because of a situation that they have, they should be jumping to help us, because we've helped them for years stay out of wars. Yeah, please.
Interesting.
Secretary Hegseth went so far as to say that the
Yeah, now this thing's playing games with me. Yeah, so he was saying that there are some people that are supporting and some that are not. And yeah, So, I mean, we just saw a whole list of folks who are not supporting. So, I'll be interested to find out who is going to support him in this endeavor. So, let's see what we got here in the comments. We have Sweet Chili asking about it. We see the Israeli Prime Minister. Yes, we did. Let's see. We got Dark Pasha. Welcome to the check-in saying meltdown Butterfinger. Then we have Save Man Woman. Welcome to the check-in saying Trump hurt the USA brand badly. We will take decades to fix this, unfortunately. Okay, we got Save Man Woman saying no allies, no one is supporting. Yep, that's what I'm saying. No support. That's what I'm saying. I gotta give you that. So we're gonna now have a person take a look and give a assessment of how they think the strategy is going when it comes to um this whole Operation Epic Fury. So let's get into this. And y'all, he's entertaining. Very.
That the Strait of Hormuz is open, other than the fact that there would be fire against vehicles transiting the strait. This is clearly amateur hour.
As the war in the Middle East escalates, my next
Not
guest
amateur
says that
hour.
we've seen this movie before. Joining us now, former Transportation Secretary and Afghan war veteran Pete Buttigieg. I want to play something that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said earlier this week about how this war differs from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Take a listen.
This is not 2003. This is not endless nation building under those types of quagmires we saw under Bush or Obama. It's not even close. Our generation of soldier will not let that happen again.
You're also a part of that generation of soldier. What's your take?
What I'm worried about is not the soldiers and the people who are serving. What I'm worried about is their political leadership, like Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump. You know, we lived through a war that was sold to us on false pretenses when I was younger. This war has not been sold on any pretense. The president just went ahead and did it. Here's the biggest thing that has not changed since the war in Afghanistan or the war in Iraq. The biggest thing that has not changed is who pays the price. We have now seen 13 American service members killed. And when you prepare to go to war, the thing you think about, the thing you most dread, is your family being the ones to get that knock on the door. More than a dozen American families have now gotten that knock on the door, and the president has basically assured us that there will be more where that came from. And while they're paying the ultimate price, every American is paying some price. Right now, mortgage rates are up because of this war. Food is going to be more expensive because of this war. And of course, the price of gas that we're paying at the pump is more expensive because of this war.
So the Trump administration argues that they needed to take action to take out Iran's nuclear weapons program and Iran's ballistic missile program because when they came into office, the Biden administration, your administration, had done nothing in 4 years to stop Iran from building a nuclear weapon, developing ballistic missiles, funding terrorism around the world. Are they wrong?
Yes, of course they're wrong. I mean, for one thing, the president assured us that the nuclear program, President Trump assured us that the nuclear program was, in his words, obliterated just a few months ago. And let's also remember that in the past, Iran's nuclear program was contained without a shot being fired. I think President Trump thought he could get a better deal than the Obama administration did. He failed to get that better deal, and he went off and launched a war without planning, without being ready for even some of the most basic things. I mean, it is a certainty that the military would have advised him that the Straits of Hormuz would have been closed, that that was a likely scenario, and yet they're talking about this and clearly acting as though they didn't think this would happen. The Secretary Hegseth went so far as to say that the Strait of Hormuz is open, other than the fact that there would be fire against vehicles transiting the strait. This is clearly amateur hour at the Pentagon and in the White House. And again, the price is being paid by all of us. You can also just tell from the administration's attitude toward this war, the fact that they're putting out videos treating this like a video game. It's not a video game for the families of the fallen. And then, just this week, we saw campaign fundraising materials being put out, emails where the president's committee, the president's political operation, was raising money off of images of him in a dignified transfer. Any politician who does that has no business leading American troops in the war. If the president is willing to raise campaign funds over the bodies of America's war dead, he is unfit to be the commander-in-chief.
Let's talk about the status of the war. My panel joins me now. Congressman, I mean, President Trump just said a few hours ago on social media that Iran has been beaten. So why are we still there?
Right, yeah. This has been the big mistake of the administration. You can argue we never should have done anything with the war, but I would say the biggest mistake is just not preparing the American people for it. And then when you realize this is going to take a few days longer than you think, right now a couple weeks longer, then it's just constantly, oh, that's all right, we already won though. Don't worry, tomorrow it'll be better. And I think the president, in his own way, we've seen this before, is panicking because the market takes a hit, because people are turning against him. And he wants to live in this world where we're right on one, being successful in one day. I just think he needs to level with people and say what the truth is. Hey, we may be done tomorrow. This may go on for a few more weeks. The Strait of Hormuz is going to matter.
That's the leveling with the American people. What
Right.
about the Iranian people? Because in January, President Trump was saying help is on the way, right? And now it seems pretty clear that regime change is not necessarily in the cards.
Yeah, and the Iranian people are squeezed between the airstrikes and a regime that is extremely brutal. I mean, people tell me that there are roadblocks everywhere in the country. An 88-year-old was telling me that he was made forced to get off his car to open up his trunk at a gunpoint. So, yeah, it's not a good situation. Tehran was under intense bombing last night, and so was the city of Isfahan, and people are just waiting to see what's going to happen.
Where are we in the war?
Well, I think the president's faced, the reason you're hearing some uncertainty or mixed signals is because they have two choices. The first choice has already been made. We're going to end Iran's military capabilities and end their ability to project terror and force abroad. The second choice is whether you take their oil infrastructure out, their oil export infrastructure. You don't take it out if it looks like there's going to be a regime that rises in place in Iran that we could deal with and it would be peaceful for the region. You'd leave that infrastructure intact if that's going to happen. If it's not going to happen,
it's not going to happen.
Then we have to take out their oil export.
I'm just telling you it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't sense, at least at this point, any notion that there's going to be some sort of reasonable government.
Well, but then in that case, we have to leave it decapitated militarily and unable to export oil to China and Russia.
Talking to people in the field about the midterms.
This year, we opened 2 new restaurants while running, how many?
5 others.
5.
Is this coming up at all? Are the American people engaged in the war?
It's really interesting. So I did spend a couple days with, these are, organizers who are in communities, and you would think it's housing, it's healthcare, and those are concerns. The war is coming up. It's percolating in a couple of ways. Young people who are angry, and similar to our own polling, angry that he broke his promise, worried that they could be
broke his promise about taking
the country to war. And I should mention that these are like black and brown young people, some of whom are in the military or come from families that have military service, and parents are worried about their kids being sent, and they're not buying it. They know it's a war. They're not buying it. Politically, the president is trying to, and Republicans are trying to not say it's a war, but they know it's a war, and they know our troops are in danger. And so it's just interesting that in a time, in communities where you would think these cost issues would be top issues, that actually people are, they even asked one of the senators this week about the War Powers Resolution, which,
Really?
Yes. They, it was like, oh, this housing bill is great, but wait, we want to talk about the War Powers Act, which, when do you ever hear that from activists on the front lines?
Brad, do you disagree with Congressman Kinzinger that there wasn't enough preparation in terms of communications to the American people about why this is happening, how long it's going to take, et cetera?
I wish the president had talked about it in his State of the Union address, but he has spent 7 months telling Americans that we have to take out Iran's ability to project power abroad. And frankly, this is 7 presidents too late. He's the first president who's had the guts to take out the force that has caused chaos and mayhem and killed Americans almost every administration going all the way back to Jimmy Carter.
And we're seeing a different threat environment right now. Attacks on the synagogue, at Old Dominion University. There is, I'm not blaming it on President Trump, but there is now this cost at home.
Yeah, there is. And, I don't think this is necessarily Iran projecting its power, but, anytime you have a big thing that is could be interpreted as religious, you have, a chance that somebody gets radicalized. And I think that's what you're seeing, these lone wolf radicalizations. And I'll also say, what Brad was saying makes sense, and the administration should actually hire you to come out
Yes.
and lay that out, which is, we'll take out your oil if you're going to be bad, we'll leave it if you're going to be good. I think Americans need to hear that. Are we going to occupy Karg Island or not? Are we going to hold it hostage while we kind of figure it out?
What happens in Iran if the U.S. takes out the oil?
Karg Island specifically is the economic lifeline of the Islamic Republic and of Iran. Just to make the threat, it has a psychological impact on the Iranian regime. Let's not forget that Karg was under intense bombing during the war with Iraq, and ultimately was one of the key reasons that Iran surrendered and agreed to sign a peace deal with Iraq. 90% of Iran's oil is exported from that. If it comes under attack, it will retaliate.
Okay, y'all. So what did you guys think about their assessment? We have another one coming up. We have a major general he's a retired major general from the Army, and he has some interesting perspective on everything too going on with the war, particularly about Trump, as someone just put in the comments here about him, not needing help, but really do require some help. So we do have no way, Yahuda is saying, it's so funny to me that America thought it could hit Iran, then say peace, the peace sign, and beg for help, all while still trying to look like the winner. Now, that is the president. That is the president, sir, that is doing that. We have Sweet Chili saying Iran government can't control independent. We only main one that can be switched off. Okay. Then we have the SV rider here. Welcome to the check-in. Look, you dumbasses keep saying America like everyone here wanted this. Ignorant idiots. Yeah, there's very few people that I have seen that have went online and said, yeah, we wanted it. Very few. So then we got Purple Penguin, then taught me that word wanker. He's back with that. Talking about headset. And we got Mark saying hello. Welcome to the check-in. So y'all, this next video is a major general retired giving his perspective on what's going on.
War with Iran has now entered its third week, and our government has already burned through literal years worth of munitions. That's according to reporting by the Financial Times, which cites 3 people familiar with the matter. Adding that this is fueling concerns about the rising cost of the conflict and America's ability to replenish its stockpiles. Remember, Pentagon officials told lawmakers that the first week of the Iran war cost more than $11.3 billion. In fact, some GOP lawmakers have heard estimates that the Pentagon is spending as much as $2 billion per day. That's according to Politico. But burning through munitions or taxpayer dollars doesn't seem like a huge concern for the Trump administration. From the beginning, they've told us that all bets are off. Here is how Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has put it.
No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. Death and destruction from the sky all day long. We will keep pressing. We will keep pushing, keep advancing, no quarter, no mercy for our enemies.
Joining us now to unpack this all is retired Major General Randy Manner of the United States Army. He is also former acting vice chief of the National Guard Bureau. Major Manner, let's start with this rhetoric from Hegseth. This is a guy who publicly defended war criminals before. What do you hear when he says no rules of engagement?
First of all, thank you for taking the time, as you did a few minutes ago, to recognize the fallen. Every single military member who is killed or wounded in action, their lives actually impact dozens of their families. So thank you for taking that time. Secondly, I want to be very clear. The words that the Secretary of Defense said are absolutely the words of potential war criminals. Those are the kind of words in terms of no rules of engagement. The idea that no quarter be given, putting it bluntly, the president cannot protect this Secretary of Defense, even if he does give him a pardon for any crimes. The International War Tribunal will potentially consider this Secretary of Defense for war crimes against humanity.
General, as somebody who has served in the military, I want you to kind of fact check for our viewers this constant claim that we hear from people like Pete Hegseth that we have unlimited munitions, that we have unlimited firepower, that this war could last as long as we want it to last. We hear that also from the president. There is this kind of arrogance to dismiss the fact that resources are being spent, not just financial resources, but human resources as well. And the fact that we're taking pieces away from South Korea to protect our allies and assets in South Korea and bringing them to the Middle East to protect countries there.
It is absolutely political propaganda and lies that we have unlimited resources. Think about it. That implies that we have as many missiles, unlimited, infinity. Not true. Absolutely not true. It also disturbs me greatly when the president himself says, we're going to hit them again just for fun. It sounds like a bunch of frat boys talking about something. Death and destruction and the harmful impact on human beings is not something fun. And it's very disturbing whenever we have our senior leaders discussing it in terms like this. The criteria for what the purpose of the war is keeps changing, and therefore the American people do not know, and the world does not know, when will all this nightmare end, such that we will not see, for example, gas prices exceed $4 a gallon, which will happen in the next month, given what is happening.
General, earlier this evening, we had a former Pentagon official whose entire career and work there had been dedicated to reducing, minimizing the possibility of civilian casualties. And we talked to him about what happened at the Iranian girls' school. Do you believe, given the direction the evidence is heading, the finding from this probe that the U.S. is in fact responsible, that accountability, responsibility goes all the way up to Hegseth?
I do not know the facts behind the situation. This Secretary of Defense reduced personally the number of people available to investigate these kinds of potential issues from 200 to only 40. That is indicative of the fact that it falls into his umbrella of we're not going to have any idiotic rules or whatever. Those rules are meant to be able to ensure that we only hit military targets, that we minimize or recognize whenever civilian targets are hit. We improve our rules. We apologize. We in many cases have provided financial restitution to those families that were impacted. I don't know where this is going to go. I only know that this administration is absolving itself of all responsibility of war and engagement under the Geneva Convention.
To that point, General, I chuckled a little when you mentioned frat bros with relation to the Secretary of Defense. It does seem like we are being governed by the manosphere of the manosphere and for the manosphere. But I wonder if this incident, coupled with what we saw last year with the Venezuelan boat strikes, might form the foundation for genuine accountability, whether in an international tribunal or even here in the United States among the courts martial.
Within the United States, with this present administration, they've already demonstrated they're unlikely to be able to hold people accountable for the actions or even the mistakes that occur in the military. They continue to eliminate JAGs. They continue to intimidate them. They ignore the legal advice of counsel within the Department of Defense. And I have talked to many retired and active JAGs. And quite frankly, this administration is basically says we are above the law, or they are above the law. This is extremely unfortunate. I think it's indicative of not only where we are, but where we are going in the next 2 years. I think this is also something that puts our own servicemen in harm's way and also opens up the door for possible persecution under the international law, which of course the president has no ability to do anything about that whatsoever.
General, we've been talking about how we are running down our munitions. We have pulled THAAD batteries out of Korea and the Pacific. Could you talk a little bit about what this war may do to our military readiness elsewhere in the world?
It is absolutely reducing our ability to be able to defend, for example, Taiwan, for our ability to defend the United States. Every missile that we fire over there is one less that we have to actually use for legitimate defense of our country. Again, we only produce a few missiles per month of some of these varieties, and we are firing them constantly. So while there are stockpiles, absolutely, and I want to make sure to reassure anybody who's listening to us, listening to this broadcast, the United States remains the most powerful country on the planet. However, we do not have unlimited resources, and we should be using them wisely, let alone, of course, putting the lives of our American servicemen in harm's way.
But on that, what do you think realistically our allies are going to do or recalculate now that they've been shown that, A, they won't be approached and be given much of a say before we launch a war, and then once we're in it, we'll actually take things from them that we had offered to them as part of their protection in previous agreements. If we're willing to snatch it away from them like that, are they going to have to look to others in the future? Are they going to rely on us going forward?
The only ally right now that can rely on U.S. support is Israel. Whatever the prime minister is telling the president to do, that's what's happening. In contrast, all of our European allies, all of our allies in the Middle East are feeling, quite frankly, abandoned because they were not notified, they were not included in this. In contrast to the two presidents Bush, they both worked for months, very quickly, very strongly, to be able to convince and educate the American people about why we were going to war. And secondly, of course, worked very extensively with our allies to develop a united front so that it was not just the United States, it was literally dozens of nations together to be able to do what we needed to do. In this case, the president is acting unilaterally, and we are losing friends every single day.
General Randy Manner, thank you so much for joining us again.
So what do you guys think about his commentary? He did mention about the war crimes, and he also felt that, I guess Pete Hegseth may be affiliated with that. Hold on, we got Rob Davison here. He's leaving for the night. Have a good night. See you next time. See you Wednesday night, hopefully. Okay. So what else do you guys think about the his commentary? I thought he had a lot of good points that he made, because he did reiterate what someone had said before about the other countries not being included in the decision to go and do all this. So he made great points in my opinion. What are we talking about in the chat? We have No Wave saying, while he said it, only ally America will help is Israel. Okay. Then we have Sweet Chili, I'm bypassing in different systems and hiding my IP. Okay. I don't know about all that, but know what you're doing. Then we have Ray Skandura here. Welcome to the check-in, saying lose BB the narcissistic wannabe gangster. Okay. Purple Penguin is saying, like Stingray, Sweet Chili, hope you're not using your cell phone. Okay. So we have another video where they're telling us that the U.S. cannot unilaterally open up the Strait of Hormuz. I think we all know that now, but guess what? We're going to still watch this.
Now on, US President Donald Trump calling on other countries to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. Jared Monshine is the Director of Research at the United States Studies Center, and he joins me now. Jared, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Just why is Donald Trump asking allies for help with the war now?
When oil is now over $100 a barrel, and when 20% of all oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz, President Trump thinks it is a global responsibility to open it back up. At the same time, it's not even clear that the United States has the military capability of opening up the Strait of Hormuz unilaterally. This is another instance where the U.S. may very well be the most powerful military in the world, but it does not have primacy. And what Iran is doing is basically leveraging its asymmetrical advantages over the United States. It just takes a couple drones, It just takes a couple attacks here and there, and all of a sudden that completely destabilizes and stops all flows of oil in this region. So as a result, the United States is hoping, and President Trump in particular, after first denying any need for allies, is now hoping that allies and partners, including Korea, Japan, China, France, and the UK, will come to the table and actually take some of the burden of opening up this critical pathway for the oil markets.
Do you think Donald Trump could foresee just how bad the situation around the Strait of Hormuz could get?
That's a great question. According to reports, the military very much did say that this was a possibility. And it seems that, again, according to reports, that Donald Trump thought that the U.S. military might over Iran would actually overwhelm any possibility of this occurring. With that all said, this sort of circumstance should not have been a surprise to anyone. The U.S. military, and like so many militaries around the world, do all sorts of drills and exercises, including for a contingency in the Middle East. You've probably heard about contingencies in the Indo-Pacific, especially around Taiwan or the South China Sea. But in the Middle East, the Strait of Hormuz is probably one of the most sensitive areas to any contingency. And what do I mean by that is that it is many have expected that Iran would take this sort of pathway if any attack on Iran were to occur. And reportedly, the U.S. military said as much, but again, Donald Trump did not think that Iran would actually go ahead with this, and instead, he thought that the U.S. would actually overwhelm them to such an extent that it wouldn't be possible. As a result, what many military experts would have predicted would happen did happen, and now the U.S. in many ways is playing catch-up.
How is the Middle East war being viewed in the U.S. by the public right now?
Right now, I think a good barometer of what you think of the U.S. strikes in Iran is what you think of Donald Trump. Unlike prior U.S. actions in the Middle East, most notably the Iraq War and Afghanistan, the U.S. president at during the Bush administration had a pretty high approval rating and a pretty sizable majority of the population supporting his attacks, the U.S. attacks on Iraq and Afghanistan, with U.S. popular support being in the 70s to 90s. In this instance, the majority of the U.S. is not supportive of this. With that said, I have to wonder if Donald Trump had taken the effort to actually bring the American people along for the ride, basically rhetorically articulate why this was necessary and explain the need for it, I think there could have been a chance that he would have gotten greater approval. But on the whole, you see a majority of Americans not in support of this. With that said, you see the MAGA base, those who self-describe and self-identify as MAGA, as being supportive of this. And some 90% of self-identified MAGA voters support this. With that said, the broader Republican coalition and those who voted for Trump in 2024 are not as warm. And that looks to be about a 55% approval rating amongst those who voted for him in 2024.
Okay. So what do you guys think about that? Because he was saying that basically, let me switch to my screen here. He was saying that basically when they do war gaming for this part of the region, that they always take into consideration Iran possibly, closing off the Strait of Hormuz. And then they actually did it. So I don't know why anyone would think they wouldn't do it. That's like a strategic advantage, And like you guys said in the chat here, like they're allowing China to go through. And if you're not affiliated with the United States or Israel, then you can go through. But if you are affiliated with their enemies, you ain't going nowhere. And then you got all these boats just sitting here like sitting ducks. So I just don't know how that's gonna play out. I really don't. Now, let me see what you guys are saying here in the chat, and then we're going to switch gears a little bit. So we have Sweet Chili saying, oh, red bar, they are close in the area here. What you mean by oh, red bar, Sweet Chili? We have Ray saying, as long as BB and Trump are in power, America subject to endless war and starving the homeless. Okay. We have Romaine Brown Bush World, welcome to the check-in, saying we have plenty of oil. We have Eli not giving 9236 saying, so no, we don't have the infrastructure to support the level of consumption we engage in. And then we have Craftsman saying, as long as Iran's military capabilities are destroyed, we can leave. Okay. Then we have No Waves, Yehuda saying Russia is supposed to be a big rival to America, but Trump just lifted sanctions while in a proxy war with Ukraine. And then we have Romaine Brown Bushworld saying he still doesn't know the war is over. Now, you guys may have known, which I didn't know, but like some of the folks who work for DOGE had to they had to give a deposition, if you will, regarding how they conducted business for Elon Musk. And apparently, I think there was like a potential infraction regarding Social Security numbers. Some to that effect, y'all. So I want us to hit on that for a little bit. Let's get into it.
Former employees of Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency in the hot seat tonight.
You don't regret that people might have lost important income to support their lives?
No. Deposition videos from January tied to a civil lawsuit going viral online. Lawyers asked former DOGE staffer Justin Fox about projects flagged as diversity, equity, and inclusion, including a documentary about Jewish women forced into slave labor during the Holocaust.
It's a specifically focused on Jewish cultures and amplifying the marginalized voices of the females in that culture. It's inherently related to DEI for those reasons.
Fox said he used ChatGPT to help identify and eliminate DEI programs. The depositions are part of a lawsuit filed by humanities groups that say DOGE violated the First Amendment by canceling more than 1,400 grants used to fund arts, history, and education projects. On Friday, the judge ordered the groups to remove the videos they posted. The government said Fox was harassed and received death threats because of them. The groups filed an emergency request to reconsider, but it was denied, and a hearing is set for this Tuesday. NBC News obtained the videos from the Internet Archive, and Musk even amplified one of the clips on X. In one video, former staffer Nathan Kavanaugh said their goal was cutting spending.
I think it was more important to reduce the federal deficit from $2 trillion to close to zero.
Did you reduce the federal deficit?
No, we didn't.
Before DOGE ceased to exist and Musk's relationship with President Trump ended in a public feud, the agency claimed $150 to $180 billion in savings, far short of eliminating the deficit. Julie Sirkin, NBC News.
We thank you for watching.
Yeah, did you see how that man said? Hold on. Sorry about the flipping. The guy said he used ChatGPT to figure out what programs should or should not be cut from receiving funding. ChatGPT. And I'm not an ageist, but how old are these people making these kind of impactful decisions? What experience do they have? I'm confused. And we got this the SB writer saying DEI is a joke. Well, it's a thing of the past for the most part. So we got Purple Penguin saying that's what we all wondered, but they lived from us, so they got hired. I guess you're right. Now this upcoming video, the lawyer was asking the guy, okay, how do you define DEI? And he was referring to a guidance document, but he could never give his own definition of what is DEI. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into that.
There was the EO explicitly laid out the details. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
It's okay. I'm asking for your understanding of it.
Yeah, my understanding was exactly what was written in the EO.
Okay, so can you...
I don't remember what was in the EO.
So right now, do you have an understanding of what DEI is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding as you sit here today in this deposition?
Well, it was exactly what was written in the EO. And so anytime that we would look at a grant through the lens of complying with an executive order, we would just refer back to the EO and assess if this grant had relation to it.
Okay, but I guess stepping back from your methodology strictly in terminating the grants, do you have an understanding as you sit here today of what DEI means?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your understanding of what it means?
Well, it is exactly what was written in the EO.
Okay, so
and I don't have the EO in front of me, but that was we would always reference back to the EO and make sure that this grant was in compliance with the EO.
I understand that. Okay, but I'm not asking necessarily about what was in the EO. I'm asking very specifically about your present understanding of what of DEI. Do you have a present understanding of DEI?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you explain what that present understanding is?
Well, it's just easier for me to be referencing back to the EO.
Are you refusing to answer the question?
I'm not refusing to answer the question.
Okay.
I just feel that referencing back to the verbatim executive order was the best way for us to capture all of the DEI language. And so I think giving a high-level overview of what I could relay as DEI is not going to do justice what was written in the EO.
And that's okay. We can look at the EO as well. Great. I'm asking you this is a deposition. I'm asking you questions. You're under oath. And you're required to answer them. So what is your understanding of what DEI means?
Well, I think I would say, again, that I would go back to the EO to make sure I'm capturing enough. I don't feel comfortable saying a high-level overview because it is such a big bucket, and there's just a lot of pieces of the puzzle.
What's a part of the bucket?
Gender fluidity, sort of promoting, promoting subsets of LGBTQ plus that might alienate another part of a community. Again, it was just easier for us to reference back into the EO.
He said a whole lot of nothing.
So,
and I don't want to give you a broad overview because it's like,
he can't.
At the end of the day, it is capturing, it is all encompassing in the EO. It's how we did our methodology.
Right. Do you always refer to EOs to gain an understanding of words used in your typical daily vernacular?
Objection.
What do you mean?
You say that you have an understanding of what DEI means, and when I ask you, you say you need to reference the EO. Do you need to reference EOs to define every word you use in your everyday life?
Objection.
No.
Okay, so what's stopping you from defining DEI to your understanding as you sit here today on January 28th, 2026?
It wouldn't be capturing enough of how big the topic is. DEI is very broad.
Oh, Lord, he just sat there and mumbled and bumbled for about 4 minutes, and he still didn't give a definition or a summary or nothing. I mean, if they wanted to see what the EO said, they can go pull that, sir. But they wanted to understand, like, how did you apply this EO when you made decisions based off about DEI where folks did and did not receive funding? This is crazy. So we have Lou saying, laugh out, just asking for a definition, buddy. Exactly. We got Purple Penguin saying, this is literally the hot seat. Oh, yeah, he was cooking in there, wasn't he? And then Purple also had said a whole lot of nothing. And then we got Romaine Brown saying, have mercy on us. Yes. So this next bill kind of give a little more insight as into why they were being deposed. So let's get into that.
Y'all, a new whistleblower report is raising further concerns about Donald Trump's now disbanded Department of Government Efficiency and the unfettered access it was given to your Social Security data. The Washington Post reports, quote, the Social Security Administration's internal watchdog is investigating a complaint that alleges a former DOGE employee claimed he had access to 2 highly sensitive agency databases and planned to share the information with his private employer.
Really?
The Post adds, according to the complaint, he allegedly told the whistleblower that he needed help transferring data from a thumb drive to his personal computer so that he could sanitize the data before using it at the company. Those databases, according to the reporting, include records for more than 500 million living and dead Americans. Wired has identified the former DOGE engineer, according to multiple sources, as John Sully, who now works as the chief technology officer for the health IT division of a government contractor called Leidos, which has already received millions in Social Security Administration contracts. The Social Security Administration, Sully, and Leidos all deny the allegations in the complaint. Joining us now is senior writer at Wired, McKenna Kelly. Did I say that man's name right? Sully.
Yeah.
There we go. I said it 2 different times in that intro. The type of information in the Social Security Administration database that is alleged to have been breached, this is E4, let's bring that up. Your actual Social Security numbers, place and date of birth, citizenship, race and ethnicity, and parents' names. There are so many questions and have been about what DOGE had access to, and most importantly, what would happen next. This is the fear. This was the fear the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a lot of what senators have said in response to this, they're calling it one of the biggest data breaches in American history.
Wow.
It's everything that you would have to send the Social Security Administration in order to get a Social Security number, to get a Social Security card. And when we make these, when we give this information up to the government, we expect them to take care of it. We expect them to lock it down. And what we've seen here is that all of these DOGE folks came in and were given this crazy amount of access to data that, doesn't really get in a lot of people's hands for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Do you think when Republicans, MAGA Republicans, were so excited about DOGE that they thought this is what they would be signing up for?
No, I mean, when we had Donald Trump asking about it, bringing it up during the 2024 campaign, it was very much waste, fraud, and abuse.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't going into systems and taking all this data and possibly bringing it to a private third-party company that already had all these contracts, $1.5 billion in contracts with the Social Security Administration. That was not part of the plan, at least from what was given during the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I want to dig a little bit deeper into what has been uncovered about the transfer of this information, because the Washington Post reports that there was essentially, this came out of a Justice Department court filing, that Social Security Administration discovered a secret agreement between a DOGE employee and an unidentified political advocacy group. The agreement called for sharing Social Security data with the aim of overturning election results in certain states, according to the filing. The agency also acknowledged for the first time that DOGE members had shared data with each other using an unsanctioned third-party service that Social Security officials have been unable to access. At the end of the day, for those of us with short memories, it was Elon Musk who was running the Department of Government Efficiency. What do we know about his involvement with these efforts?
Yeah, it's really unclear at this point. But when you bring up being able to use this data to go after, elections, people possibly voting illegally in elections, that's been one of the big major fears about these data grabs. We've already seen major efforts at DHS to kind of revamp a database called the SAVE database.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing a lot of this data being used or could be used, interconnected in many ways to come up with addresses, to come up with different ways to maybe track immigrants in areas, all across the country, but also, maybe use it to go after elections and try and find people who could be falsely or illegally voting in elections, which we all know it does not happen at the rate that this administration says it does.
But it's something that nevertheless Musk has been personally obsessed with for a time that predates Donald Trump.
Yeah. McKenna, I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer. You just look like one. Why is it the person you wrote about, why is he not in jail? Because if any one of us were to take this kind of information, we're using words like breach and people's social security numbers and dates of birth and things like that. If any of us had that kind of data and we were taking it from one place to another, wouldn't we be in jail? Yes, the guy denies it, but the actions that we're talking about, aren't they illegal? Or did I miss a memo? And can I go out, quote unquote, criming like this myself?
Yeah, I mean, it seems incredibly illegal, right? But what the process is going through right now is this was a whistleblower complaint filed with the Inspector General's office at the Social Security Administration. And we all know from the beginning of this administration, the Trump administration made a lot of these IGs toothless. They revoked a lot of their power, a lot of their investigatory power, cut a lot of staffing and funding. And so even if this was to move to some kind of indictment, some kind of charge or something like that, it's going to be incredibly slow rolling. And then also, the next body that would be in charge of investigating this is the FBI. And that's, we've seen how that has worked.
Yes, we know. The FBI.
At the Olympics. Okay.
Right.
I want to go to this New York Times headline about these deposition videos. So if you guys are as online as some of us around this table are, then you've seen these videos of former DOGE employees kind of talking about the ways in which they decided what things got defunded or unfunded or taken away. And they were forced to be pulled down because Justin Fox, one of those former DOGE employees, has been the subject of significant harassment, including death threats. In one clip, he's asked whether he agreed with ChatGPT's flagging of a documentary about Jewish women who were slave laborers in the Holocaust. He said, it's specifically focused on Jewish culture and amplifying the marginalized voices of the females in that culture. It's inherently related to DEI for that reason. These deposition videos, this new kind of investigation that's happening, all of this continues to raise questions about why maybe unqualified, some would say, people had access to our information, but were also making decisions about who in this country was allowed to get money and why.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're seeing a lot in this specific lawsuit that you bring up. And it kind of comes down to also, I mean, when I read that and when I've been following this, what is the definition of DEI?
Right. And he didn't have an answer.
He did not really have an answer.
He said it was in he said that the EO told me.
And specifically with the example that you just pointed out about the documentary about Jewish women slave laborers during the Holocaust, he said it was because it was about amplifying these women's voices. Is that DEI?
Crazy.
That's not the historical definition of DEI. Right. And so, I mean, when you look at that, and I think the New York Times reporting said something to this effect, that a lot of the grants that were cut was pretty much all of the grants during the Biden administration.
Right.
Is that the definition of DEI? I don't know. It sounds like it, at least from what we've seen by the actions of DOGE.
God, so much of this conversation is just, I might leave early. McKenna Kelly, thank you very much.
He said he might leave work early. So they gave a little bit of insight regarding why they kind of did these depositions regarding Social Security potential breach. What are you guys saying here in the comments? We have Craftsman saying it's narcissistic to put people in Cadillacs. Okay. Eli is saying that's not a very nice thing to do, and it's called neocolonialism. Craftsman. Okay. They said a lot of big companies investing in Venezuela. That's what Craftsman said. Then Muhammad saying, is BB dead? I don't know. I don't know if he is or not. I mean, we saw him at the coffee shop, but they said that's AI. So my guess is as good as anybody else's. So now we have Lou saying, so now I got to pay for more credit monitoring. Yes, you do, sir. So we're going to switch gears a little bit because I heard that there's some things going on with Cuba. And so Trump was saying that there's some opportunities happening possibly in the near term. So let's see what he's talking about, y'all.
In other news this morning, President Donald Trump spoke yesterday about the ongoing negotiations with the Cuban government while traveling to Washington, D.C. on Air Force One. He made clear that talks are underway, but Iran remains the focus for now. Take a listen.
Cuba is right now a failed nation, and they don't even have jet fuel to get for airplanes to take off. They're clogging up their runway. But we're talking to Cuba right now. I have Marco Rubio talking to Cuba right now, and they should absolutely make a deal because it's really a humanitarian threat. And we have a lot of great Cuban Americans, and they're going to be very happy when they're going to be able to go back and say hello to their relatives and do things that they should have been allowed to do for a long time. I'm very interested in the people that are here that were treated so badly by Castro and the Cuban authorities.
Well, his remarks come after Cuban leader Miguel Diaz-Canel confirmed that the communist regime is holding talks with the United States this past Friday. Meantime, tensions in Cuba continue to rise amid the ongoing energy crisis worsened by the U.S. oil blockade. Over the weekend, Cubans took to the street there to protest their government amid the ongoing economic crisis and the blackouts right there in the country. The frustrations were also felt miles away right here at home in South Florida. Local Cuban community members gathered in Little Havana to protest in solidarity. This all comes after Cuba confirmed Friday that talks have taken place with the United States to try and defuse the crisis. Well, our local lawmakers are also weighing in on the situation as they call for freedom against the communist regime, including Congressman Carlos Diaz-Balart as well, a number of senators as well. Of course, you can stick with us here at NBC6 on air.
Okay, so we have Romaine Brown here saying trying to stifle the country because of an embargo. So was the embargo placed on the United States? Can you give me a little bit more insight into that, please, Mr. Romaine Brown? I appreciate that. Purple Penguin saying there was a whole full island blackout. I hadn't heard about that. Romaine Brown says so much diversion. We got Sweet Chili back. Welcome back, Sweet Chili. We got Annette B saying Mr. Obama opened travel to Cuba and Cubans in Miami were irate that he did so. Really? Why were they irate? Then we got Eli saying there is a Cuban who works in the pot shop I like who came here as an asylum seeker. Okay. So we have another video where they're talking about the United States being able to invest in things in Cuba. So let's see what they're talking about on that.
Go now to an NBC News exclusive, a rare interview with a top official in Cuba who says his country is now open to welcoming investors from the U.S. NBC's George Solis spoke to him, and he joins us now from Havana. Hey, George, good morning.
Hoda, good morning. Oscar Perez Olive Fraga is considered by many to be Cuba's economic czar. As the country's deputy prime minister, he's the man in charge of breathing life into Cuba's struggling economy. Now, he sat down with me in his first ever interview to explain a series of economic reforms aimed at creating what he called a dynamic business environment. His goal, attracting foreign investors, including from the United States. Tonight, he plans to tell the nation that Cuban nationals living abroad in places like Madrid and Miami will soon be allowed to invest in the private sector and own businesses on the island. Here's a little more of what he told me.
Cuba is open to having a fluid commercial relationship with U.S. companies, also with Cubans residing in the United States and their descendants. And this extends beyond the commercial sphere. It also applies to investments, not only small investments, but also large investments, particularly in infrastructure.
Yeah, but how realistic is this? Cuba's deputy prime minister will be the first to tell you that Washington's trade embargo makes attracting American capital to the island a non-starter, saying in part, quote, the United States blockade, the policy of hostility against Cuba, undoubtedly affects the development of the economic changes because the policy cut off international finance, access to technologies, access to international markets, and most recent years depriving the country of fuel. Now, it's worth noting it's been 3 months since a drop of fuel has reached Cuba. Power outages can last as long as 16 hours a day. Women giving birth in dark hospitals. Highways are empty, and for many Cubans, the bus never comes. Hoda?
All right, George Solis for us there in Havana. George, thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll see if they're going to have, some investments coming over there. I guess Cuba might get a boost in their economy. Romaine Brown, was it Romaine Brown that was saying about the embargo? Yeah, it's so many of you guys here, I can't remember. But okay, so we'll just keep okay, he says yes, the blockade. Okay. And Sweet Chili said, I would love to go to Cuba again. I have never been, but I would like to go. Okay. So, y'all, one of my favorite clips of all time is from A Few Good Men. Okay. And I felt like this clip, this scene was so relevant to what's going on with Operation Epic Fury, with Operation Roaring Lion, and just everything going on in the world. Okay. So I'm going to play this for you guys, and then I'll be right back. Yo, one of my favorite scenes right there. He ordered the code red. Yes. What we got here? We have Sweet Chili saying you can't handle the truth. That's right. And then we got Purple Penguin saying, yes, he ordered the code red. And Romaine, no, I did not hear that the president was bragging about Cuba falling, wanting them to fall. Craftsman says, Rubio, we got another job for you. You got to go home this time. Yes. So y'all, that is what we have for today. So we have Lou here saying, laugh out loud. Ironically, this is about an incident that happened at Guantanamo Bay, which is in Cuba. Okay. Yes. So we have talked about BB and whether that video at the coffee shop was AI or real and what's going on with him. We still don't know. We heard from Israel regarding their perspective of Operation Roaring Lion. We also got some insight into Trump's request for help from his NATO allies. And quite a few of those allies have said, we not doing it. Okay. Then where else did we go after that? So we got to hear some perspective from like some political analysts, from retired military, all the things. We got all that covered. We hit on those and those depositions, as well as what's going on with Cuba. And we ended with one of my favorite clips from A Few Good Men. So yes, y'all, that's all I got for tonight. What y'all got for me? I mean, we have been here for 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 9 seconds and counting. And I really appreciate you guys supporting. If you haven't done so, please like the live stream. Also, if you are so inclined, please subscribe to the channel. I am going to be back on Wednesday. I normally do these lives on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Okay, so much going on. I enjoy hanging out with y'all. I'm learning about all this stuff in the process, and it's a good time. So what we got here in the chat here? We got Lou saying, "Laugh out loud," and I'm sure he got paid the most at Purple Penguin. Oh, he said Jack is only in the movies for like 13 minutes, and so Lou is saying he got paid the most probably. So we got Sweet Chili saying BB and the Six Fingers. And let's see. Purple Pink was saying, are we over? We're on the way there now. We got what time do you start? I start usually at 7:15 p.m. Eastern. Yes. And I try to be consistent. Now, Monday, I'm going to be traveling back home from visiting my parents. My mom is turning 81. So, with all the high gas prices and high flight prices, I'm flying back on Monday instead of on Sunday night. So, yes, we have Romaine saying they're much. I don't know about Cuba, but I know their doctors and nurses were here for us up to this day. Last time my child had a lung infection, they helped. I love Cubans I knew. Okay. I hope your child's doing better since he or she had a lung infection. That sounds serious. Then we got user saying Obama lowered the deficit 21 to $8 trillion, giving us a deflation. We have Annette saying, nice meeting you. Good night. Good night, Miss Annette. Let's see. We got Darren saying Biden had a 40-year high inflation in June 2022. Purple Penguin said, you are so great, love. Can't wait for next time. Be safe, sweet chili. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the kind words. Yes, Lewis saying like, share, comment, and subscribe. Sweet Chili said, I will try and join when I can. I appreciate you, Sweet Chili. I do. So thank you for supporting the channel. And I'm going to say it again. You be safe out there. I know that you always do. Okay? So I'll be back Wednesday, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. If I come back earlier, I will put something in the community wall. So go ahead and subscribe and check me out. Yes. Purple Penguin is saying that he wish he could hit up Sweet Chili on social media. Be safe, brother. That's right. Okay, y'all. Y'all have a good night or a good morning. Step Fashionista out.